The YouTube algorithm is an anomaly when it comes to music recommendations. We've been exposed to songs like the immutable pop city banger Plastic Love, or the masterpiece that is Ryu Fukai's Scenery, and other oddities like the mysterious Litter Goya by Badushka. Well, used to be mysterious. The algorithm picks up tons of different music genres and exposes them to many different demographics. Usually it's just a few albums uploaded by random users, but there is one YouTube channel that is dedicated to uploading and curating very specific content. Atmospheric or soulful style drum and bass. This channel's name is aptly named Ambience, and they've been uploading this specific type of drum and bass for the past 5 years. And there have been quite a few albums that have really taken off in the algorithm. In this video, I want to talk about people's exposure to drum and bass, its electronic subcultures, my experience with it, and the modern perspective on atmospheric drum and bass in this era of EDM culture. Ambience joined YouTube on April 10th, 2015 and started uploading obscure drum and bass releases. Most of these releases would range from the early 90s to the late 2000s. The channel uploads a specific brand of drum and bass, atmospheric and more quote-unquote intelligent drum and bass. I use the term intelligent due to its frequent use to describe other electronic music genres. For instance, IDM is a ubiquitous term in electronic music to describe acts such as Aphex Twin, Boards of Canada, Square Pusher, as well as other groups with IDM elements like Sweet Trip. If we take a listen to some samples from the channel and compare them to other drum and bass at the time, you could tell an immediate difference. As you can tell from some of the music, the rave culture of the 90s was pretty wild. Ambience would upload its most popular albums and sets starting in 2018. Besides the intrigue for this niche electronic genre, there is a solid reason for why these took off in the YouTube algorithm. The thumbnails. As of the past few years, there's been many cases on YouTube like Ambience where people feel a sense of nostalgia for something they'd never really experienced. The sights and sounds of Vaporwave prove that you can evoke that feeling with just slowed down Diana Ross tracks and 3D animation tech demos from the 80s and 90s. And I guarantee most of you have spent a few hours wondering what it would be like to live in 1980s Japan, listening to city pop and wishing your life looked like a Kar-Wai Wong film, despite the fact that those are Chinese movies. I don't know how that works. But that isn't too dissimilar to why these videos are popular. The visuals can evoke a strong sense of nostalgia for the late 90s with its colorful computer graphics that give you an otherworldly vibe. Ambience's most popular upload as of this video, Bache Studio Set from 1996, cycles through low-resolution renders of early 3D landscapes and objects. What's so enticing is the atmospheric drum and bass adds a futuristic veneer to the visuals. Electronic music, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s, always had an air of futurism about it from the outside. I remember listening to Pendulum's Hold Your Color for the first time and thinking that I was living in the future. The mixture of music and visuals also fuels your imagination for how people back then saw the future. What kind of world can we create with a computer? This type of art painted such a unique and cool future. But little did they know that the actual reality of digital worlds would be Kermit the Frog being socially awkward smoking a blunt on VR and dudes with too much disposable income and no investing knowledge losing all their savings on encrypted JPEGs of poorly drawn monkeys on a fucking blockchain. How far we've come. There's just something inherently cool about all of this. The drum and bass, the visuals, this era of electronic music. Sitting on your computer browsing the internet late at night to drum and bass is such an incredible feeling. It's kind of like you're living a diet Bladerunner in a way. This visual accompaniment makes me dreamy. Hopefully one day somebody will make the drum and bass glossy 3D world of our dreams and we can kiss our crushes under the low poly fauna. This only encompasses one upload on this channel, but I feel like the other ones paint a more vivid picture of electronic music culture and graphic design from that time. Especially these covers. They were so ubiquitous. The late 90s and early 2000s loved their weird, swishy, undefinable shape in their logos. The designers had a field day with this skew transform and everyone ate it up. Or what about this obtuse design? Why is this urban word have one oddly spaced letter in italics? I can't even shit on this design because I dig it.
Urban flavor, modern jazz, drum and bass, turbo funk.
This cover right here is the foreplay before the amazing sex your ears are about to have. I'm pretty glad that drum and bass is being re-examined and discovered by new people. I think it's one of the most underrated electronica genres, and it often gets too much flack for its repetitive nature. If I had to try and find something profound about this channel, it would probably be that it's just a great showcase for how interesting and atmospheric drum and bass can really be. Someone else recognized the greatness of this genre and decided to continue the trend. Due to Ambience's absence on the platform since 2020, some have taken it upon themselves to start uploading compilations and other hidden gems onto YouTube. One such channel is 4am Breaks, who opened up their channel in October of 2020, just 3 months after Ambience stopped uploading. 4am Breaks is the natural evolution of a channel like Ambience. Instead of just uploading albums and compilations from the past, they also upload newer artists, which isn't surprising that many new drum and bass and breakcore acts started appearing since 2019. Most of the releases on this channel are newer artists borrowing concepts from atmospheric drum and bass. For instance, Pizza Hotline's Level Select from the current year of 2022 is just a 90s drum and bass warship with the veneer of vaporwave aesthetics. Aquarium Breaks also pays mind to what made Ambience work in the algorithm by adding enticing, nostalgic-inducing visuals, some of which are created by 4am Breaks themselves. Releases like these feature rudimentary 3D art that has primitive rendering to give the effect of 90s and 2000s 3D art. The attention to detail in particular does so much heavy lifting for building atmosphere when listening to these projects. Because of 4am Breaks, I've been exposed to some great new drum and bass, and I implore you to go check them out if you've exhausted Ambience's catalog, or really just haven't had enough of this genre. Hell, I'd say some of the newer releases eclipse a ton of these old classics. Now, I'm just going to cover my tracks here before I continue the video, but people are going to comment anyway. I do realize that UKF, drum and bass, and other channels have existed well before Ambience and 4am Breaks, but the resurgence of the genre, and in particular the subgenre, at least on YouTube, has been due in part to these compilations from the 90s and early 2000s. UKF plays contemporary drum and bass that's played in clubs and doesn't reflect the same ethos as liquid or atmospheric drum and bass. So the part of this video that is specifically about drum and bass on YouTube is practically over. But I can't go without talking about the drum and bass forum dogsonacid.com and how it shaped the drum and bass genre in the mid to late 2000s. Dogsonacid.com was founded in early 2001 by Bad Company, a UK-based drum and bass group. The primary use for this forum was just for production discussion and advice, but it did come to shape how drum and bass music was circulated and proliferated. I was a frequent lurker of the forum and often went on it just for recommendations, but some of the biggest names in the genre got their start posting on Dogs on Acid. Noisia, Danny Bird, and a little-known obscure act known as Pendulum were active users on the website. Some of these artists' earlier releases were through the website's own label Breakbeat Chaos. Arguably the most important release under this label was Pendulum's Hold Your Color, which saw massive mainstream success when it came out. Well, at least in Europe and that side of the globe. In Europe, drum and bass, trance, house, breakbeat, you name it, are fucking popular and have a lot of mainstream crossover. In America, the most eyes electronic or techno music ever gets is like Daft Punk and maybe Prodigy. I might be wrong about that, except for like EDC and new EDM culture, but that's, in the 2000s, all the electronic music people ever really knew. To find stuff like drum and bass, you had to go on these forums back in the day. I'm due to talk about forums of the 2000s and 90s versus today, but for a specific hobby or niche, these are the types of places you kind of had to go. The centralization of some of these topics on places like Reddit or Twitter might not enable the rich history and culture that a forum like Dogs on Acid does. Posts and users get deleted on Reddit and Twitter, but forums usually just lock or keep posts. Even though it might be just remembered by a few, having posts like this matter. A compilation record called Jungle Sound Gold featured one of their songs without their consent. Pendulum's frontman Rob Swire posted about the incident, which attracted thousands of replies. Small digression, but this is why forums are better at preserving internet history. Some of this stuff might get lost on newer platforms like I mentioned before. Sometimes we should be looking to the past to find a solution to this ever-emerging problem on Twitter and Reddit. Well, you made it far into this video. Before I wrap this up, if you really like the music that was on Ambience or 4am Breaks or in this video, I got some great recommendations for you to check out. Firstly, if you really like some of the more mainstream stuff, check out all of Breakbeat Chaos's catalog. The best entry into drum and bass is probably Hold Your Color by Pendulum. It got mainstream success due to its variety in its sounds and styles, and it's well revered for a reason. But if you like more of the atmospheric drum and bass that Ambience provided, here is a few more recommendations. Believe in My Soul by Makoto is the sonic manifestation of being downtown during the summer. All the sights and sounds, the sun, the humidity, the crowded streets. This album evokes the chaos of a city, but intertwines it with the warmth of summer. It's a great album to run or walk to. My favorite track has to be Let Me Love You. Devious Methods by Hive is a classic for sure, due in part to its purposeful blending of genres, being drum and bass and hip-hop. The tone of the album reminds me of a neo-noir film. There are both sinister and playful undertones. This album gets a bit more conceptual in the way it uses samples and percussions, so it's not really a casual listen. Regardless of all that, the album cover should sell you on this. It's an anthropomorphic tiger with a bionic arm smoking a blunt to the weirdest shit going on around him. Why does this crow have an eyeball in its mouth? The hell's going on here? What's up with the tiger's boots? Look at the veins on his hands. Also, he's lit like a candle. This cover just looks like an AI-generated image from today. My favorite track's gotta be Ultrasonic Sound or the title track. Now for the thing you've been listening to during this entire segment. rkodr by Transient Stellar is an ethereal shoegaze-inspired masterpiece. The sonic wall of distorted, cloudy guitars acting as a cacophony to the very muddled drum and bass beats make this an otherworldly experience. There's something both relaxing and tense about this album. The only way I can describe it is that this album feels like your life is flashing before your eyes. There's an angelic quality to this album that gives it a mystique. This is an essential drum and bass album that doesn't get talked about enough. The very last recommendation I have is quite challenging, but it might be one of the best electronic records of all time. If you're into it, I'm Out of It by Christoph D. Babylon is the most evil sounding record in electronic music, period. This album is impressively oppressive. It manages to make you uncomfortable and terrified in a variety of ways. The album opens up with a 14-minute dark ambient track called Opium that perfectly sets the stage for the rest of the album. The DMB breakcore beats make you feel like you're having a scab that you have to itch, but can't. The soundscapes feel like an untreated psychosis. While most of the tracks feel different from one another, they all build up to the final track, My Confession. I am incapable of describing the feeling that this track gives you. It's claustrophobic in its percussion, but the tone is accentuated perfectly when the bells come in. I can't play this track for you due to copyright reasons, but if there's one track you're going to listen from any of these recommendations here, it's My Confession by Christoph D. Babylon. Tom York of Radiohead says this is the most menacing record that he owns. I don't know if there's any better endorsement for it than that. Drum and bass has had a rich underground history on the web. And compilation channels like 4am Breaks and Ambience and all the other ones I've missed are inspiring new musical artists with their stylings. Even though a lot of it is just nostalgia bait, the future is looking really bright for all of these genres. And I would only expect more from here on out. Morning Joe. If you like this video, give it a like, comment, subscribe, give me the succulent engagement that I so desire. Just to put it very brief, this is what I do full-time now. I set myself up for it. It's not like a thing that I just threw myself into carelessly, so I don't really care if I make that much money off of it, but I would like to see some success out of this new wave of content. So I am just playing the game by asking you to give me engagement. So I'll remind you again, like, comment, subscribe, watch all through the videos, do all the engagement stuff. Yeah, but this video is only the tip of the iceberg of what I'm going to be doing. So expect a lot better than this, hopefully. Bye.